Oh, kick Connor out.
Now it's recording.
Yeah.
So now that it's recording, quick vote. Who thinks that instead of funny hats for the next time, Joe should have funny hair?
One. It's only two. I don't know. It's
Oh,
not.
come
It's not
on,
a
Mario.
majority.
Okay, everyone who's
Yeah, I just think the hat has a higher chance of happening. So like it's a more solid bet.
vote for what you would like, not what you feel.
Can we put up a poll somehow? Is that something you can do in Google?
Oh,
Yeah.
let me see. And obviously, if you do this, then we have something where Ed needs to follow suit, or else forevermore it will be known that Tempo is better than Loki. So
That already, man.
I'm really selling this, aren't I? I can't find a Paul. Oh, there's a Paul. Oh, okay, okay. Funny here.
Could I vote? I guess. No, I don't think it's letting me vote because I started the poll, I guess. Okay, I'll check this in a bit. Let's get this going. It is 10 after the start. Let's get this rolling a little bit. We will come back to the poll. The poll's important. I will announce the results, but first, let's get into tempo. So this is the September Tempo community call. Thank you all for coming. We'll kind of review, updates on Tempo, what's going on now. And I think Mario and Marty have put together a nice presentation for just some slides talking about search and some other updates on the project. Before we get into that, though, we have an observability con coming up. I guess I should know the dates. I don't know if we've announced the dates, but whatever, in the next few months. In the doc, there is a link to the CFP. So if you click that, it's a call for presentations, and you are welcome to submit anything. It doesn't have to be Tempo related, of course, but observability. In the Grafana ecosystem, feel free to submit talks about anything, any kind of successes you had, or setups or whatever. We'd love to hear some of what you've done, so you can present at ObservabilityCon. It will be a virtual conference, so I think everything is pre-recorded, so you won't really need to sweat the details about doing some kind of live presentation. You can kind of put that together if that's a concern for you. And in particular, if you have any Tempo success stories or any kind of Tempo news, or a way you've used Tempo in your company, we have a kind of, a set of lightning talks that are about external people using our software. So if you just want to do a 5-minute thing, that also works. If you want just a small segment to walk through how Tempo or another Grafana product has, you've used it successfully, then I think all of that would be good. Please click the CFP link, check it out, think about something you might want to present, and let us know. The other thing I want to announce before I hand the mic over to my friends here is we have started using milestones in the Tempo project. So we kind of talked about this internally, and we've been trying to find ways to organize work, know what everyone's doing, and to kind of have an idea of what we're working towards at any time. And we felt like the GitHub milestones were a good match for what we wanted. So right now there's a V1.2 milestone up that you'll see. And we will continue to do this going in the future. So it kind of give you an idea of what to expect in 1.2 if you want to have a place to check. Also kind of give you a rough idea of how far along we are in the development process of the next release. And it'll be a good way to kind of keep tabs on what's going on with Tempo as you kind of are looking forward to the next releases, and maybe you don't have the time to go check notes or look for a community call or something. It's just a good place to get a live update of what we consider a priority for the next release. And we intend to do this for 1.3, 1.4, and all future versions. So far, I think we've had roughly a 2-month or so, every other month cadence on releases, and I expect that to roughly continue. There's no hard dates. We're not on purpose every other month releasing, but we do kind of just get a set of features that we think are worth, releasing, and then cut it. And that's been about once every other month. So kind of expect that cadence to continue, I'd say. Cool. Those are my major points. I think somebody added a 1.1 release here if they want to talk about it, and then we can move to the presentation.
Yeah, I added that. I just so during the last call we were kind of talking about it was coming up, and I just wanted to say it is out there, and there's a blog post that kind of goes through the main changes in there. I don't think there's any big functionality. It's mostly a stability release, and then there's a lot of good improvements in there for stability and performance and things. So cool. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Okay, so there, I guess I'll go ahead and share this presentation thing.
Yeah, go for it. So far, hat is winning 3-2 over hair. So if you care deeply and you want your opinion to be expressed, click a button up there.
Let's see, this was talking about, so 1.2 is upcoming. So that's the current release. Our next release, that's kind of like what everything that we're talking about now will be kind of related to that. We wanted to mention member list fixes, and are these in 1.2? So member list, if you're using member list, there, we've had some issues ourselves, and maybe some other people with, the ring propagation can sometimes lead to unhealthy, ingesters or other components, especially during rollouts if there's a lot of them. If the size of the rings in Tempo are larger size, it had a higher chance of leading to unhealthy components. And there were some really, really important fixes that were merged. I think these actually might have been in 1.1. You know what? Instead of rambling, let's go check that out.
I was actually looking it up myself. Although I do approve of rambling, I do it a fair amount myself. And yeah, no, wait, maybe not. Yeah, this has been fixed. So 1.1, this is fixed. Not only did it fix the unforgettable issue, but it also we have found some issues, which is like propagating bad messages repeatedly for no reason. So the amount of volume of traffic has been reduced. And we've also tightened up our defaults for member list and everything else. And so you should see better performance there.
Yeah, a really important fix was the propagation of the tombstones, the handling. So if you did have an unhealthy entry and you forgot it, those work very well now. So it's easy to forget the unhealthy components. So yeah, I'd say, okay, cool. So we're gonna talk about search for a little bit here. So I guess I should preface and say we don't have a live demo, but we do have some screenshots, and we'll kind of walk through and talk about it. I'm sure we'll have a demo for the next one. We just weren't ready for that. Is that cool? So if you're expecting a demo, I'm sorry, but maybe next time. Cool. So talking about the timeline, this is kind of where we're at right now. And this was in the previous call. I don't know if it looked exactly the same, but I'm just putting it here because it's good to talk about. So phase one, Tempo 1.2 will have an API. It will search the ingesters, and there's a matching Grafana UI for Tempo that we'll talk through there. And so the Tempo query language, like the query language that we're looking for, it's still out there. So it's coming up, but it's not in this UI. So I just wanted to make sure like that was kind of like explained here. So the UI is, let me see if I can make this bigger. I don't know how well this is going to show up. Is that making it worse or the same? Let's see. So the UI will, when it's enabled,
kind of visible there.
Kind of visible.
You might want to just like mention some of these fields and what they are, because it's a little hard to read. I think I know what the fields are, so that helps.
Yeah, the screenshot's a little wide, but sure. So when it's enabled, there will be a new tab inside the Tempo data source called search. And the previous one that was called search was a Loki-based search, and that is renamed and called Loki search. So there's the search tab now. It looks a little bit different. Cool, thanks. And what we did is this search is, kind of like basic. It's like looking at tags and attributes of the spans. There's not the full power of the query language. So what we've done is go through things like service name, like that's a dropdown. So we'll populate the dropdown with all the different service name attributes that have come through that are in the ingesters. And then the next dropdown is a span name. So span name is going to be like the operation. I think that's typically like a URL or something else, right? So it depends on the instrumentation. And this is missing there's the run button up at the top. So yeah, you would click that to execute the query. So we kind of have, instead of a query language, that's this UI that will build kind of like it'll build the API request behind the scenes, and you can run the query. This tag field is an open-ended, or kind of like a dynamic field here where it's in log format, and that is for finding matching tags. So this query, what it's doing is it will find any trace with the service name as tempo query frontend, right? And this is actually the service.name attribute that comes through like in the batch. So if you're looking at the kind of like trace details inside, that's what that comes from. And this is looking for any cluster that is ops US East 0. That's one of our internal clusters. And so it will combine all of these parameters together and find those traces. This is a minimum duration field, this third one down here. Oops. Yeah. And so that will only find traces that are more than 1 second. And so that duration field is the go duration kind of format. So you could do 5 ms for milliseconds, or seconds, or hours, minutes, things like that. And the search results are just displayed in a table down below. And these are just some basic columns. Like, I know we've talked about this before, like what other data would we like to extract? Yeah, so trace ID, these are clickable links. So when you click the trace ID, it will show up in the secondary window, just like how, kind of like what you would expect. The other columns are trace name. So this is the service name and operation. And it's kind of like just, something to show to help differentiate the start time of the trace and the duration. And these columns are sortable. And then, so yeah, so if you click a trace, this is what it looks like. It pops it up on the side, and it's, just like looking at another trace side by side. I'm sorry, is Richie having trouble like joining or coming back and
Yeah,
forth?
I don't know. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. Something else, like sometimes this like split view is a little small for me. I think my monitor might be smaller than others. If you control click that, which is what I normally do, it'll just pop a new window. So for small traces, I think the split view is really cool. But when your trace gets huge, I think you want like its own window, and the control click works nice for that. So Richie just can't decide if he wants to be in this meeting or not.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little distracting.
I think he's clicking on the wrong one. I mean, maybe.
Oh, he's just trying to switch to something else, and he keeps clicking the wrong meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. This visualization can maybe feel a little bit tight. I think that's something that we want to work on. Yeah, so well, let's talk about this a little bit more. I want to talk about these tags. And so this is a tag-based approach. It will find traces with matching tags. You can combine multiples. So in this field here, you could type additional values in. So this is looking for cluster. And the root dot is kind of something that means it only looks at the matching, the root span. So that cluster attribute has to be on the root span. Cluster is, of course, a custom tag or an attribute that we put on our data. And I think that's configured in the Grafana agent, maybe. Like Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mario. Like, I think those attributes like cluster is added. I'm not sure what part of the instrumentation pipeline adds that. So we have multiple Kubernetes clusters, and this is one of them. And this is how we could find traces just for that cluster.
Right, ours is,
yeah.
There's a couple ways to do that. It's a good thing to talk about in case anyone's interested in that, because all of Grafana's like stick is based on this like consistent metadata thing, right? Like, let's have the same tags on our spans, our metrics, and our logs, and it kind of lets you build all these cool correlations. I think cluster, you can either configure it on the client, so you can say always add these tags, and you can just tell the client to put the cluster on every single span admitted by a process or namespace or whatever. And also the Grafana agent has the ability to like query metadata out of Kubernetes and other sources, and then attach it to spans as they flow through the agent if you want to do things that way. So yeah, attaching that is pretty critical, I think, generally in tracing to kind of narrow down and find what you want. But there's a couple ways to do that.
Right. So other common tags would be hostname, pod, IP. Right. Really, like it's any tag that you have in your data. So I mean, depending on how your spans are instrumented or what kind of values you have, customer ID, file name, things like that. So like any of those would work. This condition here is actually a substring match. So we don't have the full language. So we've kind of just taken some shortcuts. I guess I would say it's a case insensitive substring match. So it doesn't have to be exact. And so I think until we have the language where you can be more specific about that, that's probably this general approach is the best. So just, it looks like an equal sign, but it's a substring match. Cool. There is a max duration limit. And so I guess you could find traces under that limit. And then there's a limit field. I think these are maybe not as useful as, or as powerful as the other ones, but just to mention that they're there. It limits how many results are returned. So if you just wanted like the first couple instead of a bunch of them.
All this is under development still, right? This is hidden
Yeah.
behind a flag, and Connor, who's on this call, is the lead developer for this particular feature. So this is a good time as we kind of go through this to maybe get questions or suggestions together. It'd be a good place to kind of discuss that. So if you think of something, any ideas, please propose them. Thanks.
Maybe something like online search of the trace ID. Like I'm starting to type 231 and I will get filtering results online.
The trace ID feels like it'd be pretty difficult, but there is some autofill on some fields, right, Marty? Some of the fields autofill or
yes.
auto-suggest.
Yeah, actually, without the live demo, this is a little bit, this isn't shown in here, but all of the tags fields have autofill. And so for the tag names, if you start typing, it has two autofills. One, it'll autofill the name, the tag name. So if you have like pod host name, http.url, http.status code, it will start suggesting those names. And then after you do the equal sign, it will auto-populate the values. Right, and so it has autofill on those two things.
No, I mean like in more like UI, not some logic based on text or something, just to easily find the trace ID you already know. Like you see it in another place and you just want to find it in this long list.
Oh, I see. So if you want to type in the beginning of a trace ID, but not the full ID.
Yes.
Yeah,
because I'm not copying it,
we've...
I just see it on another window, something like this.
That's interesting. Like, there's a lot of trace IDs. Certainly, it'd be impossible over the full backend, just because we have billions in the backend. And if you type the number 1, then you're going to get a billion entries back, right? So maybe recent, like, I'm not sure how to constrain that to make it work. Like, because trace IDs, there's so many of them. Like, it would have to be maybe one in the last few seconds or the last few minutes. It would be very difficult to do that across the full data set, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you, though, for the suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. The autocomplete are in these screenshots, but it looks really cool. Definitely. We'll get to that next time. Cool. Let's see. So let's talk about, so like these are some numbers from our internal testing. I think we had some of these last month, but here's some later ones. So we're searching over 100 million traces, and it's about 140 gigabytes of data, 400 blocks. I think we have 50 ingesters now, and that's 15-minute retention. So for 15 minutes worth of data around of 50 ingesters, that's what that is searching over. And it's about 3.8 per seconds. So I think that's something we can improve.
That sounds slow. Like, as I've used it, I feel like it's been much snappier than that. Like if I just like type a cluster in a namespace.
Yeah, I think maybe this is an exhaustive one. If you're searching for something, it could go faster.
If you miss everything, basically, it can take that long to just search everything. If you type right, because if I come in here and I type something that there's a fair number of, like just pick a service and a namespace, then it comes back real quick.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, it can come back a lot quicker if you're filtering for something that has a lot of data. Cool. Here is
quick question here. Sorry, I just have a quick question here. So the 15 minutes retention, we mean, is it the cache retention or the actual data retention and the storage level?
So the ingesters have a setting, and I meant to get that setting name right before this. They have a setting that determines how long they keep a block after flushing it to the backend. So they always keep blocks for a little bit, and because after they flush to, it's in right here, complete_block_timeout. After ingesters flush a block to the back end, they don't delete it off their disk right away because they need to let other components have a chance to query and pull the block list and get that block in. And so normally it's like 5 minutes, but we've extended that here just for other reasons, and also just to have more data in the ingesters. So as you can increase that, that will control how long data is retained on the ingesters. And if you increase that, then you'll be able to search more. The downside is it's using more disk on the ingesters.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Right. So what we're talking about here is just like recent traces search is what we want to release in 1.2, at the least behind a flag. And then we're also working on full backend search as well. This is just kind of like a first step.
Yeah, if I go back to that timeline here, kind of like just the ingesters, yeah. So if there's more data in the ingesters, there's more to search. But yeah, just recent. You wouldn't want the ingesters to store a day's worth of data. That would be probably bad.
On a small install, that'd be pretty easy.
Actually, yeah.
Right. If you're like doing a single binary and 10,000 spans a second or something, 20,000 spans a second, you could throw a big disk on there and probably get full search over, hours and hours or a full day. We do like over 1 million spans a second, like 150 or 200 megasecond, and then you can only keep so much of that on disk before you run out of disk.
Are you sampling or sending all traces, all you have?
Are we sampling traces?
Yeah.
We use remote sampling, so it's a feature in Jaeger where you can do per operation sampling. And some of our endpoints are query endpoints, which are more complicated kind of paths through our infrastructure. They are sampled at 100%, so we keep every single trace. Our less interesting endpoints, like the write path, which is a lot easier or a lot simpler and doesn't have issues as much. That one is, I think, at 20% now or 30% or something like that. We brought it down a bit for search because while we were adding this feature, we wanted to kind of stabilize around it before scaling back up. So the remote.
Every trace that's received by the ingesters is searchable, though.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
But could you add a little more details about how it is implemented? I mean, what is index in this case? Like where Loki is using some indexer to provide the search capabilities. How is Tempo in this case is working?
Yeah, I have some slides and things that kind of go over that. I think maybe let's do that on the next call. But it will talk more about the internals, about what kind of data, and it's a lot of it's changing still, so we're kind of still adding to it. But yeah, we'll go through that on the next call if that sounds good. Yeah. Let's see. We had a question here.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there going to be a setting to cap the search lookback, sort of like Loki does? I think the full search, like what we really want to do is, so Grafana has the time range that's part of the query already, and we'll just follow the time range. So I think that's controlling. So I know, wait, the look back is something a little bit trickier than that, I think. I think what we'll do is, what we would do in Tempo is just follow the time range. Once we go to like the next release for the ingesters, we don't look at the time at all. It's just all data in ingesters. We just search everything in ingesters. In the next release, we would follow the time range. And so I think what we do is we look in the ingesters and the backend, just like how we would do for a trace ID lookup.
Yeah, I'm interested in what the look back is exactly, because Cortex, I know, has a setting where if it will only look in the ingesters for certain ranges of time and look in the backend for different ranges of time. And I figured we'd replicate that in Tempo. So I'm not sure if that's it. You basically say like everything within 15 minutes, don't bother checking the backend, check ingesters, everything outside of 15 minutes, go look in the backend or something like that. Table manager. Whoa. Yeah, we don't have a table manager.
Yeah, about that look back, I think we'll have to look into that and see if Tempo needs that. Like we might be able to, with the block list polling and the time ranges, we might already be able to prune blocks out of the back end and just know if they match or not. It
Yeah,
might
I
be no
mean, like,
impact. Yeah.
I guess I was thinking like, I mean, if you search for like 6 weeks ago and you only had a week of data, I figured it would just return nothing. Although I guess what this is doing is maybe short-circuiting that and just quickly being able to reply like, there's no data here, adjust your retention period, perhaps. Is that, maybe that's the point of this setting? I don't know. I'd have to go ask Ed or Cyril. I'll go bug them.
Yeah. Okay, so here's how to get search now. If you would want to mess around with it and let us know, that would be awesome. For Grafana, it's the latest 8.2 pre-image. So I don't think 8.2 has been released, but this experimental UI will be in there, and it's still behind a feature toggle. And so I have here is the environment variable that you can set to turn that on. And I'm not sure if feature toggles, if you've seen that before. There's 2 ways to do it. This environment variable one is just pretty easy. So you can, if you enable that environment variable to the value tempo search, that will show up. And then for tempo, just grab the latest main branch build. And so it will be in 1.2, but we don't have any release candidates or anything like that yet. And it is also behind a flag. So there's this search _ enabled. Set that to true. And it has to be set that way for both the distributor and the query configs. So those are kind of like the inputs and outputs where it has to be enabled. The ingester doesn't require any changes. Cool. Let's see. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's just keep going. So this is other stuff that we have in 1.2. There's memory usage for the compactors seems to be really improved. So we just had some internal improvements for buffering that we did as part of just benchmarking while we were doing search, and we came across them. So I think, so that's good. I think compactor ooms are probably pretty popular. And so I think everybody will be happy about this one.
Right, I think this was a memory leak that you just accidentally fixed in the middle of the search PR. You were looking to do a performance improvement, but it actually also happened to catch this compactor memory leak that was never quite bad enough for us to really dig into, but did result in some ooms, and then you just magically fixed it, which is awesome.
Magically, yes.
That's right.
Okay, cool. There is a new CLI command to query blocks to pull a trace straight out of the backend. So that's pretty cool. So you can do that without a tempo running. You can just point the CLI at the bucket or the file store at the backend directly, and it will do the same work, pull the bloom filters down, go through the index, things like that. So that can be really good for debugging or a way to access the raw data. There is also a new command to kind of fix some different ways that blocks can become corrupted. So if they're missing an index or bloom filters, or there's something wrong there, it can reread the data file and rebuild those things. Cool, and then this is a link to the Tempo 1.2 milestone. Yeah, so if you look at the 1.2 milestone, you'll kind of see what we're targeting for that release. In this case, service graphs, I will stop, and I think Mario.
Oh, well, if you can, it's just one slide.
Yeah,
I don't have it ready.
I can drive it. But you can talk about it. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Yay, service graphs. Yeah, so I think we spoke about service graphs in the past community call, but in summary, so service graphs is a feature we're working on. It's a visual representation of the different relationships that various services have. And well, the idea is to build a diagram where nodes are services and edges are how these services communicate. So we understand how our system is built, and better understand the different relationships between them. And we've so it's in development. We didn't want to show a live demo yet. The UI is a bit rough, but hopefully for the next time we can have one. But still, we have news and some developments. We have set up on a given, like an architecture, a strategy. So how it works is, as we process spans in the agent, we can build these relationships by processing. So we inspect the kind of the span, and we look for two spans which match our client and server services. So we can build this, so the two services communicating. That gets translated to a Prometheus metric that we feed to, well, in this diagram is Cortex, but any Prometheus compatible backend works. And yeah, so we built a couple of metrics regarding the latency, how many hits, like how many requests happen between services and such. And then Grafana can pull all those metrics and we'll build all the relationship between the services and basically draw the map. So just a couple of last notes. Where the backend development, the development and the agent is happening in a dev branch, which is Signal in the here in the presentation. So it's not on main. If you go look into it and you don't find it. And then obviously you can run this. So we're running this internally, and you can run too. It's the UI is hidden under a feature flag, the Tempo service graphs, Tempo service graph that you can enable, similar to how you will have to do for search. And then obviously you will have to configure the data source. That is similar to linking two data sources in Grafana. So it's the same case as for traces to logs, for instance. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions or thoughts, yeah. If not, we can continue, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess one thing to just reiterate there is the service graph metrics are computed by the agent. So if you're sending it directly to Tempo or you're using a different agent or collector, these won't be available. That's the architecture that we've gone with for now. So yeah, just to reiterate that. Cool. Anything else on service graphs?
Nope, I think we can continue.
Cool. I guess we have a little update about exemplars in here. They're going forward, so a little bit more. So we are now running exemplars internally, and I think we have like a million exemplars enabled in our Prometheus data sources, and they look cool. I'm not sure what else there is to say here. This note's kind of for us mainly, or I guess if you're running like a cluster, but configuring limits per tenant was, I think, probably like the latest development in there.
Right. If you have Prometheus locally, you can do this. If you have Cortex locally, you can do this. And this is coming soon to Grafana Cloud. So this is just kind of like the latest steps to get this actually in Grafana Cloud.
Yeah. I guess this is a little update on about our internal scale.
It's as if you didn't see these slides before you presented them, Marty.
Each
was a surprise.
May not have actually created the slide or the previous.
Yeah, our scale is down right now, which is kind of sad. We did reduce it some while we worked on search because there's additional memory and CPU, and we want to kind of like tighten these things up before we kind of bring it back. But I think we're at about Yeah, actually, it's at 1 million, but I feel like we're at about 1.25. We've been kind of juggling between 1.25 and 1.5, down from about 2.5 or so. That's right. Daniel probably made it. So right, our internal volume is a little down, and that's just to kind of stabilize search and feel better about search, and then we're going to ratchet things back up and make sure we're kind of operating at a scale where we can advise people who want to be at that like hundreds of megs or millions of spans per second. Cool. So that's, I believe, do we have anything else, Tempo team? If not, we do have this poll here. If anyone has questions, you're welcome to type them in chat. You're welcome to unmute and ask questions, comments, whatever. You can also put them in the agenda. We'll pick them up there as well. And we can address anything you all need at the moment. Before we totally sign off, though, we do need to revisit the poll results. And Hair has won, actually. Hats did not win, Daniel. Hair won 6-4. I'm kind of wondering, was Richie like logging in and off to vote repeatedly? Is that
I
what
think
that
That's
was?
what I
the
was
case,
gonna say.
yeah.
That's what I was thinking. He was doing.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
Different accounts. Yeah, it was ugly. Yeah.
I think we might need to go up and talk with Richie. I don't think this is a fair poll at all. Throw these results out. Start over, for sure. Cool.
I don't have a question. It's like, could you please repeat? I maybe missed it. So you said something like, previously you need agent to collect pod names, etc., etc., and now you don't need agent for this.
Are you talking about the service graphs or some of those extra
No,
tags?
no, extra text.
Okay, there's 2 ways I'd recommend looking at to kind of attach additional metadata to your tags, or to your spans. The first is every client I've ever used just has a way to statically attach tags. So you could like have some kind of deployment process that was aware of the cluster or namespace or whatever, and you could include those as environment variables that the client then attaches. That's one. Another one is the agent can statically attach tags to everything that comes through. So you could say every span that comes through here gets cluster equals prod or cluster equals dev. And then if that agent only served one cluster, that would be one way to attach those tags. And then a third way is through the Kubernetes like service discovery processor. There's a processor that will go reach out and find metadata and try to attach that metadata to spans based on the IP. It's going to try to match up the IP for the metadata as well as the span that passed through. Of the 3, the third is the most robust, but also the most finicky that you have to kind of like work with and play with. The other 2 are rock solid and are going to work all the time, and you'll have no issues with them. So I'd experiment with those 3 ways of getting what you want.
Okay, I got it. So the only way to get like pod names is to use agent in configuration number 3.
Pod names, I think most clients attach a host name. Does anybody know that offhand? I think our pod name comes through the Kubernetes service discovery thing. I think we have match the IP up to the IP that comes through on the span, and we do that. I would say each client is probably going to by default add slightly different tags. So some are probably going to add something like host name, which might be the pod name. I don't know off the top of my head. Let's see. Yeah. So we have it actually twice. So we have host.name, which we use the Jaeger clients. The Jaeger client attached host.name, which matches the pod name. And then we also have attached the pod name through this Kubernetes service discovery thing, which is the same. We also have container. I think container, we add container. I'm not 100% sure where container gets added.
Yeah, container is from Kubernetes in the agent.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Of course. All right.
I just have one question. So I'm just thinking out loud here. So is it possible to use Agar with Tempo? So for XYZ reasons, if I do not want to use the tracing visualization with Grafana and I want to use the Agar UI component, so how does the query layer work between Tempo and Grafana and the Agar? So if I remember correctly, in the past, like Grafana uses internally the Agar UI, if I remember correctly, but I'm not sure on that. But yeah, I would love to know more.
Right. So the Grafana team forked the Jaeger UI when they made the Jaeger, when they made the Grafana whatever UI, trace UI. There is somehow, we do actually have a way to do this, what you're wanting, which is point a Jaeger UI at Tempo. That actually works. That's called
Ye-
Tempo Query. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a tempo dash query. It's a separate image. It's a separate container that runs outside of Tempo, and you point it to the Tempo API. And previously it worked, only trace ID lookup worked, but we did actually extend it. And I guess that'll be released in 1.2 so that the tag, the service operation dropdowns, the minimum duration, I mean, you can tell a lot of the elements are similar. So that actually will work. The performance will not be as, it could be bad because the way it works is it actually has to fetch each full trace from Tempo. And it doesn't just get those kind of like basic properties like what the Grafana UI that's specialized for Tempo is showing it. So that actually will work. I mean, you could try it. I guess if depending on how many results there is or how fast your Tempo is, where the data is stored, it may be pretty good, or it may be pretty bad.
So that right there is actual Jaeger query with a special gRPC plugin to point at Tempo, which we have used in the past but don't really use now. So like Marty's saying, we're not 100% sure about how it's going to operate at very large traces or at very high scale. So please feel free to jump in the Slack and ask questions if you're having issues running it with configuration or with some kind of performance thing. Please pass that on so we can make it work.
Okay, totally makes sense. So now from the UI to the backend, so the Grafana and Agar query requests are totally different. So though though the Grafana for the Agar UI, the complete UI interface is different, right? This means like
Right, I think
Yeah,
so.
if you're running this Tempo, if you're running that Tempo query container that we've linked, you can do two things with it. If you browse to it, it has the Jaeger UI in there. So you can actually use that as is. Or yeah, you could use the Jaeger data source in Grafana pointed to it. So it also works like a Jaeger data source and you could use it that way.
okay, makes sense. Thank you.
This is here's a Docker Compose example, which includes the Tempo query piece pointed at Tempo. So that might help you in terms of configuration and getting things set up.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the thoughts, everyone. I think this might be it. It's been good chatting with y'all. Feel free to reach out on the Tempo GitHub repo, of course, make issues. There's also, I think we enabled discussions recently, so you can use GitHub discussions. We have a forum, we have Slack, so definitely connect to us and let us know what you're looking at. And if you need help getting set up or configured or whatever, or if you have feedback on what we can improve, we'd appreciate it. All right. Everybody take care. I'll see
Thanks,
you
everybody.
next month. Yep.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.